Welcome to Three Beards Podcast. My name is Craig, along with Chris Austin and special guest from North Command, Keith Cassiano. How are you, sir?
Oh, fantastic. Doing great. Got my old dog Tink snoring here, so if you hear noise, I apologize.
Perfect.
But everything's great over here in the Northern Command. So thank you for asking. How are you?
Awesome. Well, apparently this we weren't supposed to get this off and running when we're supposed to because Keith decided to send me a few links, and apparently that put us in odds with a few people because all of a sudden nothing was working technology side of my house.
How
So
convenient, right?
so I had to run over to the producer's house to get in here real quick. So we'll just get into this since we're running behind tonight. So, first up, we're going to be talking about the Roswell incident. Most people should know about Roswell, New Mexico. That's anybody that's into UFOs, government conspiracies. I mean, this is like the hotbed. This is ground zero. I'm assuming you guys have at least a little bit of knowledge about Roswell and what happened.
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah. So we'll start basically with kind of in the beginning where it happened. Would be to late evening, July 4th, 1947. Rancher by the name of W.W. Mac. I think it's Brazil. Brazil. I'm not sure how you say his last name.
Brazil.
Yeah, but he's out and he hears a tremendous thunderclap. There's thunderstorms, frequent occurrences in New Mexico. This one had a different sound. In his words, it was like an explosion. That was a very distinct, sound that stood out amongst all the other thunder booms. In that same time, other residents in the area had the same reports about that storm. So right there you have, and that's where a lot of people come in. They're like, that was the moment that the crash occurred. Whether it was an engagement, the two main prevalent theories, like the government's thing was it was a weather balloon. And so one of the theories is like that lightning strike, weather balloon out there, lightning strike, explosion. That's what you hear. Other people, unknown craft engaged by military. So that leads to the actual, incident where, feel free to chime in anytime, guys. Like I said, I'll just go through the thing. So upon this, I'm looking here in the time thing. So you have, looking at my notes here, and so after that evening, then we start getting into, as people discover and start dealing in with reports that they saw one couple a couple nights before, Mr. and Mrs. Dan Wilmot saw an oval object that they described as two inverted saucers, faced mouth to mouth, passing over their house in Roswell at a high rate of speed. And so there was already reports of something in the sky. I don't know, loose weather balloon. I mean, who knows? But they saw that, and then these reports start coming in. Well, 2 days later, just prior to this explosion, first a couple of special flights from Washington arrives. One of them include Warrant Officer Robert Thomas and his companions, who arrives, and they proceed to immediately strip out of military gear and put on civilian clothing, kind of blend in with the populace. So that's, one of the things that the conspiracy theorists hang their hats on. You go forward a little bit, we get to Saturday, July 5th, and there's a sheep herder who is a personal friend of Mac, and he comes across the crashed remains and what they describe as metal, shiny metallic material everywhere that doesn't act like cloth, that when it bends, it immediately opens back up and retakes its shape. Some people describe it as rubberized, but they didn't really have anything but what looked like metal, you could actually bend it, and then it would revert back to its shape.
Revert back to a
So,
shape.
yeah, so they go, and then I'm not sure what you guys else found about the actual crash incident. Chris, Austin. Yeah, Austin, I can't hear. I might.
Austin, can you hear us?
I
Sorry,
can
can you hear
hear.
me now?
I can hear Keith, but I can't hear Chris or Austin right now. So Keith, you can still hear me? Okay. So while we're figuring that part out, see that we're not supposed to talk about this topic. The gremlins are coming out like crazy. Everything works flawlessly on Sunday, and then all of a sudden, nothing.
I mean, it's crazy to see like what's going on, and you don't want to feed into conspiracies, but I mean, is it possible? It's not impossible.
No.
Love it.
See, I can.
Can you
Okay.
hear me now?
Yep, you get back. I can
Oh,
hear
you're
you
good.
now. So apparently,
Gotcha.
and
My bad.
let's talk quickly before the government shuts it down again.
But they complete. But they completely came in and took it to the sheriff and like just confiscated and said that, oh no, no, it wasn't a UFO, it was a weather balloon trying to spy on Russia or something like that. They shot down the whole fact that it was a UFO. But the UFO term didn't exist at that time. So
Well,
Project
now,
Blue, go ahead.
yeah, no, that's just it. And the crazy part also about that is even in the articles, the Army says that they recovered flying disc, and
Yeah,
then
they
it
changed
was
their
less than a
story.
day. Yeah, day later they're like, oh wait, no, that was what.
That was a weather balloon. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
Well, you
so
know what?
even if that one, but one of the things like questions like I brought up, and I'll pose it to Keith, you guys too, is all right. If it is a weather balloon, back then, okay, I understand. You're trying to possibly develop something, you don't want it to get out. Okay, you're going to keep it a secret. But nowadays, when they've released the reports now, why are they so heavily redacted? What is so secret from national security that is going to be shared by letting us know about a 1947 weather balloon experiment?
I mean, did they have no explanation? I mean, I'm really thinking that it's aliens. I mean, they have pieces of it somewhere. I mean, the U.S. saves everything,
I
so
mean, you
I'm
see, like this. I'll use this page as an example. Even though this isn't one of those things, but that's what it would look like. It would come back and it would just be completely blacked out. All you see is like a few words, and you're like, "This is a 1947 weather balloon." I go,
Yeah,
"There's no
yeah.
reason."
Well, there's a thing called Project. I might say it wrong. Mowgli, which was a study of high altitude balloons carrying low frequency sensors. It's up in the atmosphere, and that was for like they could or was it sound waves travel thousands of miles without interference, and they were trying to see if they could hear the Soviet Union doing nuclear tests. Maybe it could have been one of their balloons that crashed, but I don't know. That it's they're really they were. If it was, why are they being so secret about it?
Well, I mean, you're going from New Mexico, which is on the west side of the U.S. I mean, but at the same
Yeah,
time, like getting to Russia, like that's for the 40s. That's a pretty big leap, you know.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
it seems like, yeah, that seems like a long distance.
They threw this project. They're like, hey, this is Project Mowgli. This is what we were doing. I don't believe it. Let's throw it out there.
I,
They may believe it.
But the night,
yeah.
but in 1952, the U.S. Air Force started the Project Blue Book
Mm.
to talk about to try to discredit the UFOs. As far as they said, they wanted to see if their two goals was to see if it was a threat to the state, to the integrity of the state or whatever, and to see if it was a big threat. And then it was ceased in 1969.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was
No, that's
Did you guys hear about the
yeah.
dummy drops? apparently.
Yeah, because that's where it started out. Like right what Chris was saying. That's where it started out. Project Sign, 1947, which became Project Grudge in 1949, and then that's what morphed into Project Blue Book, which was there until December 1969.
Yeah,
And this was their whole purpose was the U.S. Air Force was to go through and collect information based off of UFO sightings, UFO phenomenon, and it was one of the spearheads on it was from I want to say it was Ohio University, that's where he went, but Joseph Allen Hynek. He was the scientific side of it, and that was his job was to go out and for the military and show a plausible thing like no, this is going to be lights refracting off swamp gas. This is going to be
clouds.
animal. Yep, and do that part. Well, he ended up through this thing. He ended up becoming more and more on the ufologist side of it. I mean, he's the one that's even credit. It's called the Hynek scale, but it's the close encounter classification system, is what they call it. I don't know, and that was one where there's 6 classifications. The first level is called nocturnal lights, so those are going to be the lights that you see during the evening. You can't identify a craft. Second type is daylight discs, so it's going to be like the Roswell incident where you're going to see a craft fly by. That's going to be your radar visual, which is your third kind. That's going to be radar blips, anything that's going to seem military, scramble the jet fighters. Then we get into the last 3, the close encounter kind, where you have first kind is when a UFO is within 200 yards but doesn't interact with the environment or people. The second kind is where the UFO interacts with the environment, crop circles, cattle mutation, abductions, and then close encounter. The third kind, a la movies, is when like the movie Communion, when all of a sudden you just have that alien just come peering out from behind the bookcase.
Well, if they
Bro,
abduct, if they
oh my
abduct,
Yeah,
God,
if they abduct me,
Signs,
they'll
man.
drop me back off. I'm too
signs.
needy.
Yep, that's
That
gonna
movie
be the close
screwed me up
encounter
as
of
a
the third
kid,
kind.
man. That movie still screws me up. I'm an
No, my
old
wife can't
father.
do that. My wife can't do Communion. She hates that part when that little alien just starts slowly peeking its head behind the bookcase. I'm like, I love that movie. Yeah, so they do this, and so this is what we get into, like with Roswell. It is a lot of people, they want to go. There's nothing, and the great part about this one is, regardless of whether you're a conspiracy theorist or whether you're just aviation nut or anything, something crashed. There's no doubt. There's like
Something.
yeah.
Well, I was doing a little research. It's weird. Apparently, in the 1950s, Air Force conducted dummy drops, which
Mhm.
it was test pilots that survived from the falls from high altitudes. Apparently, it was latex skins and aluminum bones that looked a lot like aliens. And as soon as they fell, there was military recovery vehicles instantly picking them up and driving away like nothing
But,
happened.
they
And
didn't.
it's like, why? Why? What are they testing for?
I mean, I don't think they didn't have 12,618 missions. By the end of Project Blue Book, they had 12,618 sightings of possible UFOs and different stuff that was in the atmosphere. There's no way clouds, swamp gas can create 12,618 sightings. So there was something there at that time. I mean,
Well, there was a lot of things. I mean, just through Project Blue Book, not to get too far away from Roswell, but DC lights, where there was actually UFO sightings right over the Capitol Mall that caused a panic. I mean, there was actually thoughts that this was a Russian attack, and that it was seen multiple times over, and you go through and there's sites where it's just you start to think, same way with Roswell. We're back in the time World War II just ended. Nazi scientists have been brought over to the U.S. to work on our side and help us develop stuff. So you have Braun, who's starting to work with NASA to create the rockets, which are going to be the future for the Apollo mission. And now there's rumor that he's the one involved in some of these crafts. So there's a chance that what actually crashed, if it wasn't extraterrestrial, I mean, there's a very good chance that this could have been a brainchild of Braun, some propulsion
yeah.
system that he had, and it crashed. But the fact that leads, some like Alex said, like military secret thing that leads stuff so crazy is just the fact that if this is a weather balloon, I mean, they were right on it. I mean, they went from, it's a disc to, no, it's not a disc. It's a weather balloon. All this stuff is gathered up. Everything's gone. They're coming out with, report, and they're showing this, wood and, these pieces of fabric. And there's people that saw that crash said that's not what was there.
Yeah, I mean, they they can coerce you into what to say. So I mean, the farmer is petrified. Well, we'll take your cattle, we'll take your farm. This is
Kill
what you're
him.
gonna say, and this is what's gonna happen. That's my theory on that.
Yeah, I get into, there was bodies that were, some people reported seeing bodies at the crash site. And that's where we get into, like, if they were doing like weather testing, I mean, it could very well have been those dummies that you saw, because you just go in there, you're going to see a crash. You're going to see these figure shapes strewn about. I mean, you're not there. You're not going to walk down and check for a pulse. I mean, you're going to think, oh my God, there's bodies down there. I mean, so that you can see how people would, it could be plausible, and you could see that being there. But we'll get into, I don't know, Keith. Keith, you may have heard of this before. I'm not sure if you guys have. Hangar 18.
Yeah, I heard him. Didn't get a chance to research that much.
If
Yeah, I
you're
did some research
into
though.
Yeah, if you're into UFOs and Project Blue Book, you should know about Hangar 18 is at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and outside of Dayton, Ohio. At the time, it was called Wright Field. What is Hangar 18 is actually the home base of Project Blue Book. So everything, all the research, evidence that they collected and stuff was brought back to this place. Basically, think of it like a giant Indiana Jones. And Raiders of the Lost Ark, when they bring the Lost Ark back and you see that huge vault, with all the
Yeah.
boxes, and you put the Ark back in there. That's what Warehouse 18 is. Is it's all these artifacts, all this stuff's taken back there. Anything that they find, any stuff, evidence taken, locked away. Well, one of these areas is supposedly is the alien bodies, where they've done the infamous alien autopsy film, so that type of thing.
Makes sense.
But what leads to it, kind of and I'm bringing it right here. What they did is, so the crash happens in Roswell. Read right over the notes, and then according to the press release issued by the Roswell Army Airfield, the personnel inspected a flying disc and sent it on to higher headquarters. Well, the Air Force Base in Fort Worth, Texas, which is assumed to be that higher headquarters, then claimed that disc was a weather balloon.
Was a weather balloon.
Yep. And that's when, so some of the pilots during the transportation of this kind of told a whole different story. One of the pilots, Oliver Henderson, said that when he flew a plane load of debris along with several small alien bodies, is what he called it. So
Wow.
if these were test dummies, like they said, maybe that's the only place that they could study the information off if they're doing anything. But why would you transport a test dummy all the way from New Mexico to Ohio,
I mean,
along with debris?
I
Yeah.
mean,
So that's,
they,
and then according to the children of another pilot, their father claimed to have seen, at that Wright field, he claimed to have seen a living alien in the Hangar 18 area, and he was greatly ashamed and disgusted by what the military did by destroying and conducting tests on that creature.
wow. I mean,
So,
if it was a dummy, I mean, they would have showed. See, look, it's a dummy. It's a dummy. It's not. I mean, but when I mean, I don't know. When you hide stuff, hide stuff, hide stuff.
yeah,
Do you
and
think?
then
There's on some level, I always like playing devil's advocate, right?
mhm,
If you show that you're using dummies and actually testing high elevation or high altitude impacts, right? it could be argued that you're trying to have some sort of vehicle that would go in higher altitudes, right? Which down the road we had the SR, like 71, like the Blackbird, and then we had like B-2 bombers. We had all these different things that we've been working on for years that took a long time and a lot of effort and a lot of hush, non-disclosures, for people to shut up and not talk about when it comes to, I don't say operation security for the military or something, but it leads like so. My thought process is if you're testing dummies from high altitudes and what the impact would be on the body, like a crash dummy in a car accident, right? You're trying to see if someone could survive the impact from like 20, 30, 40,000 feet, whatever it is. Someone could reverse engineer that and say, well, why do you need to test someone's survival rate up there unless you're going to be putting people up there? And after being
Yeah.
World War II, and us going into the Cold War, it could then be you can use deductive reasoning to say, okay, well, maybe we're trying to invent planes that are going to higher altitudes, just like SpaceX. We had SpaceX a couple of days ago. They had their test launch to make sure that they could have a successful abort of one of their missiles, one of their
Dragon
shuttles,
capsule.
Rocket.
Yep,
their
Dragon capsule.
Dragon.
And they blew it. Yep, they blew up the rocket.
And ultimately the reason why we're doing that is down the road was to make sure that if we were to put people on it to send them to space, they would be able to survive. So it's one of these things of they may not have wanted to say that because we're the Russians or communists, blah 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 blah. But my research that I was doing was I wanted to see what the government was actually announcing and talking about when it came to their documentation. So I was looking at like the CIA's websites, and they were talking about how like there was interference from the CIA and the OSI back in the 40s and 50s of research or conclusions that came to be, and which that's a whole nother part of this segment that I don't want to steamroll, but it's I agree with Chris. Why wouldn't you just say there's a dummy on some level just so you can put things to rest, but at the same time, you don't want to be like, well, why are you testing it? But
I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, no, that's yeah. That's part.
and I mean another theory I have is
Yeah.
they they closed out
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
they closed out Project Blue Book. I mean, is it because they knew there was nothing going on? Yeah, they had 12,618 sightings before the end of Project Blue Book. But did they just know that, hey, this is all military? We're just gonna investigate for the public people to see. Oh well, no, there's nothing going on, and then just close it out. I mean, did they go on a wild goose chase with? We know there's nothing, but we're gonna investigate just to see if there's something. Or is there a fact of there really UFOs and there really was no dummies? Those were real people, real aliens.
No, it more served its purpose at the time because its whole purpose was to get out and kind of discredit a lot of the stuff. Take care of things that might possibly lead to more questions and try to get out ahead of it. Whereas I think we got Keith all choked up over there.
um, I'm just thinking. I'm just thinking. Like, why would people that were transporting this stuff, right? If we're gonna go if we were government agents ourselves, right, and we're going to go so far and say that these things don't exist and that what you saw was X and not Y, how are we going to allow Joe Schmo transport dude to be able to see whatever the cargo is or whatever's in the containers? Like you're not just going to be like, oh, I'm going to put a clear sheet over things.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
you would think things are going to be sealed up. You're not going to see what's going on. So I would think that if those were real aliens, you would have some sort of container or something where it's completely not visible.
Yeah, no, that's just it. It's just, there's a lot of things that, look into it, and I agree. I mean, if you're really trying to keep it secret, I mean, there is a lot of things that can go wrong in transporting it, via military planes. But maybe it's one of those at the time. I mean, we don't know. I mean, it could have been. We don't know what was threatened over these guys. You don't talk about it.
Yeah,
And we don't know what
You know,
form of transport they had at that time. I mean, we don't know what kind of
yeah,
containers they had. I mean,
it's just. But it all sounds of it. It was probably one of those, like the reports of these guys. It wasn't like they just immediately, as soon as they landed, they're like, "Holy, you should have seen what I had on this plane." It looks like it was deathbed. Kids are the ones coming back and saying, This is what Dad said."
yeah.
Do you think, back in the day, back in the '47 when this thing happened, they didn't have the technology like nowadays, man? Because I mean, it's probably not bringing it up. It's not Roswell, but back in 2004, by my house, there was a huge flash of light, July 4th. Huge flash of light flew by, shook our entire house, and then there was a huge crater behind my old house. And apparently, I don't know exactly what happened. My dad left down the street. Black cars surrounded him, saying, "You need to get out of here." Black cars are surrounding the crater. The next morning, nothing's there, just a crater out of nowhere.
Yep.
I looked up on the Google Maps today before the episode, and I looked at the crater, and now apparently there was supposed to be a church. The church pulled out, and now it's a subdivision, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's just a retention pond, for the people, they build them for the property." But why is there a actual retention pond and then a huge effing crater? Like, this is a lake. This is not what a man made. It's huge.
It
So
was Thor,
Coincidence?
dude. It was Thor.
Roswell
No
was
big deal.
July 4th.
but it's crazy. What happened?
Roswell was
I said,
July 4th.
I said Roswell was on July 4th. Coincidence?
Really? July
Yep.
4, 2004. You look it up. Look up July 4, 2004 Castleberry incident. It was a huge flash of light, shook our house. Now there's a huge crater, and I don't know. And now it's a huge crater. We used to go mudding back there, so I know there's nothing back there. And now there's a development all surrounded. There's like tennis courts, a softball field. I'm like, that used to be just an open field to go mudding in, and now there's a development with a huge hole that wasn't there, before. And why did the church pull out all of a sudden? Like,
Did they have to disclose to the church that something happened there? I mean,
I don't know, but whatever it was, I'm not saying it's UFO. It was something to make a crater, but it was removed pretty damn quick. That's all I know. And the black vehicles did something and disappeared in the night. So to this, and you never know. Like this, they had to cover their ass because there's, I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. Some of the questions, like you said, for me, I mean, if it was just a weather balloon, I mean, it would make sense that thunderstorm, lightning strike, weather apparatus explodes. They were we were testing high altitude. The dummy, everything crashes down. You got this debris everywhere. But some of the
It's a good cover
theories,
up.
yeah, it was a good cover up. But some of the stuff I mentioned to you guys, earlier in the week, Brent, Keith, the thing I've always noticed was around the same time we have a huge explosion in the advancement of technology.
Yeah.
After that, the end of later on this year, I think it's William Shockley. He actually has. If you go into it, he was part of. I want to say it was Bell Lab, Alexander Graham Bell. Anybody wants to get conspiracy theories, you can go back. There's some involved with him. But you get into this. He's working for Department, of Defense projects. Well, now all of a sudden he's one of the ones involved in development of the transistor, which suddenly revolutionizes electronics. You go from everything's based off giant vacuum tubes, and to where now the same thing, we've gone from this giant thing to now we've microsized it. So where was this leap? I mean, how did we go from a vacuum tube to suddenly we've got this whole new process of transistors, direct, wire. I go something, was it this? Was this an actual crash? Was something recovered? I mean, there was talks that this is stuff that nobody had ever seen before, and now they're coming out saying it's just weather balloon material.
They brought the
But
blueprint for technology.
that it was one of those, all whatever pop culture reference you want to write, Terminator. You've all of a sudden introduced this technology, and it leaps forward design. I mean, because something,
That's a different episode, man.
yeah, but something happened because you look. I mean, it was right after this point we've gone from it was getting there was leaks there, but we suddenly went from to now personal, like computer age just kicks off. I mean, we just have this shot of adrenaline into research and development. So was something found? I mean, everything from from medicine to across the board. So and that's one of the theories that's thrown out there is that the bodies recovered, the craft that was recovered was reverse engineered, experimented on, and that's what has propelled some of these areas of science that took off in physics, computers, I mean, across the board. So I don't know what you guys think about that one.
That makes
Why?
sense.
I mean, you'll never know, but why hide it? What's it gonna hurt for us to know that there is extraterrestrial life?
Control.
The whole universe is gonna panic. The stock
Yeah.
market, everything is gonna collapse. They're gonna feel that
I
maybe
mean,
they.
think about it right. Think about it right now. If all of a sudden a giant ship just floats down out of the sky and lands over there, you realize that all the power of authority over you right now that's telling you what to do is meaningless.
It means
Like
nothing.
you're just telling me, well, you need to do this. I think those guys are a little bit more powerful.
Yeah.
That makes sense, but if our minds were looking at it going, we think conspiracies, people are like, oh, it's just fake stuff. If it's fake stuff, then why are we pushing Space Force so hard? Obviously, they know something. It's just like, oh, cool, we have a Space Force. There's a reason we have a Space Force. And they're
Well,
just
to
like,
be
Yeah,
eh.
to be fair, the whole thing with Space
yeah,
Force.
yeah. We'll get into that on later dates there because there's a little thing called for everybody that wants a little homework called Project Solar Warden. You can look into that. That's another little conspiracy thing right there. But I think honestly, this could lead to it. But like with like Space Force, you know, all jokes aside, just kind of the name, creating this stuff. But you think of it, Keith hit on it a little bit. We just launched a Dragon capsule where we're going into space.
Yeah.
That's a different
Private
story,
industry
too,
is
man.
going
I
into
got a
space.
lot. I want to talk about that a lot, man. Uh,
And so,
what's his name? Elon Musk is doing some crazy stuff, and it makes me worried.
so you think now if you've got Jeff Bezos, you've got Elon Musk, you've got all these private corporations going up there, it's going to become like on Mars. It's going to be the wild, wild west.
When you got
Yeah.
plenty of money, you could do things. I got plenty of
Well, you're going to
money.
have and then you're going to end up with foreign powers where Chinese government, Russian government. I mean, you're going to have all these. They're not going to want to allow. They're not. They're not going to want the U.S. to set up a base on the moon, set up a base up on Mars without a response from them. And so, I mean, potentially you're going to have conflict.
Yeah.
And so,
The
I
way
mean, you can see it.
the way that I see things, I try to think of things as big picture, right?
Mhm.
There's been Craig, as I messaged you earlier with the links to the CIA's website, you can just Google this under the Freedom of Information Act, where people from the Air Force and people from other agencies have requested to get information as to like why the CIA or the OSI is involved with UFOs, and this has been going on since the 40s and 50s. I think the big resurgence has been since like Bob Lazar came out last year. But if you look 2 years ago, 2017 now, there's been multiple reports of UFOs. I
Hmm.
think it's kind of easier back in the 40s and 50s, obviously with technology, to sweep things under the rug because things weren't so easily available like they are today. I mean, I literally saw videos of Kobe Bryant's helicopter crashing seconds after it happened
Yeah.
from Facebook from different things. Nowadays, you can't pull the wool over people's eyes. So I to kind of encapsulate everything. That's why I've been kind of really quiet to everything that everyone said. One reason that you won't see that the government would necessarily admit or acknowledge that there are other beings or terrestrials is because, like Craig and I believe Chris had even mentioned, is that once you realize that like we are not the end all be all, does this really matter, right?
Yeah.
Big level stuff. Does it really matter? At the same, so you could have the control, but it's more of like a panic thing. Not in my eyes. I think it would be more of if we were to acknowledge these things, how would people react, right?
Yeah.
From there, once you realize that, like our pinnacle of space travel has been us landing random, like the Mars orbital lander. We really don't have like a deep space vehicle. We really don't have any other crazy weapons besides nukes that we know of. But and I'll asterisk that. But you got to think if there's another life form, another being out there that can have some sort of vehicle that can land here on Earth and then survive essentially, right? And
Yeah.
from all the research that we've done in our solar system, there's no other life forms, right? So that vehicle would have come from somewhere else outside maybe our solar system, maybe outside the Milky Way galaxy, So it kind of really humbles you to realize like it's like big fish, little pond, but then you realize you're just in a pond, bro. Like you're not even in a lake. You're not even
Yeah.
in an ocean. You just
Fucking
realize
pond.
like you think you're
Yep.
the big guy in the block, but then when you realize like, someone came from some other place that we have no idea what is possible, right? So I think one of the reasons why it hasn't been acknowledged yet is just because of fear, panic, what people would do. Because like, at that point, people are going to start questioning the meaning of life. Why am I going to work? Why am I going to college when there's something,
when I can, when I might be able to escape to outer space. Why am I
right?
why am I
Well,
Or
think,
at
paying
any
this
moment,
mortgage when I can escape to outer space?
or
well, think about church too. You have so many people that actually believe that we are it. I mean, I mean, imagine just what they're going to go through when all of a sudden you're like, oh crap,
It's
you
gonna
know?
crush.
Something new.
It's gonna crush their world.
Yeah.
right? And then they're going to be like, what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose? You know, I'm not saying it would lead to anarchy, but I think it would really make people question the big thing in life. Why are we here? What is our purpose? At the same
Oh yeah.
time, it's one of these things of us as a country. We want to make sure we have the best weaponry, the best means of technology to protect ourselves. You know, was it rule with a light hand but carry a heavy stick or something? Whatever one of the sayings goes. So
Yeah.
so
Ca-
Yeah.
it's you can kind of go back and forth in regarding to it. The research that I did was that there's legit UFOs and that there's other things. I personally believe, and I've mentioned this before, that we can't be the only civilization, the only type of organism, or the only planet that's inhabited. It's just,
Yeah.
in my eyes, statistically impossible
It's
that,
impossible.
you know,
I mean, we just can't be the
Oh yeah.
only being on Earth. I mean, it's
Well,
There's
it
no
could
way.
branch into so many different theories, like the theory that the hollow Earth theory, that there's an alien civilization that lives within the Earth, and these UFOs are crafts from that. I mean, you can go in so many crazy tangents, but I mean, I just the vast universe of it. I can't believe that we're the only ones. And one I've talked about it. Just people are like, well, how they can't travel that far. I've used this. I've used this kind of example before. It's like you take a piece of paper, put one point on each point. One of the theories is, well, yeah, it's going to take a long time to travel this, but one of the theories that they have now is that you bring your destination to you,
to you.
that you can
yeah,
fold space. And so if you have that propulsion, it's no longer billions of light years. You've taken point B and you've brought it right to you, and you're instantly there. So now possibility of traveling, without all the theoretical, getting into the other stuff of time and stuff that goes into, just the sheer fact of could something be possible? Yeah, it could be possible.
Man, we talked about that
Theoretically
on
possible.
we talked about that on an episode before. Like literally, you'll be sitting in your kitchen and you're like, I've been here at the same time, same
Yeah.
place. I did the
Mhm.
exact same thing. This,
Yep.
and you're like, wait a minute, I've done this. And you play back your mind and you're like, I've been here before and I've done this. And you just can't. It just goes away real quick.
Well, I think there's a lot of things that just haven't been proven as of yet. I think, could you imagine, 200 years ago, the capability of flight? 200 years ago was the early 1800s. We just got done with Revolutionary War, and you'd be like, yo, one day we're gonna have the capability of flying through the air, and people would be like, you're crazy.
Mhm.
We literally had the Salem witch trials where people would just, the way that they thought were like, let's just burn them at the
Yeah,
stake, and if they cry out, they're a witch, and if they don't, cool, they're not a witch. Or we're gonna throw them in the water, and if they drown, they're not a
yeah.
witch.
I'm gonna
And if they
talk. I'm
don't
gonna
drown, they're a
talk to
witch.
you on this handheld device.
Yeah, or Wi-Fi. Like all those things were super far out there for the time, and maybe it's just those other types of civilizations or some other life form has already figured that out, and we just haven't been there as of yet. I mean, if you look at how technology has changed in just the 40 or 50 years, um, we've been advancing just crazy. And Matt, I agree on two things. One, good for you on the on the anal probes. I hope it works out for you. And two, if there is an invasion, we're gonna get the aliens to pay for it. I really think that's gonna
I know.
happen.
I was trying. I was trying. I was trying so hard not to crack up, but I saw that. I was like, "Oh, keep a straight face.
Someone's got
Keep
to
a
do
straight
it.
face." Yeah.
We'll be
Yeah, man. I get your
we'll,
straight face and that's it.
Yeah.
Goddamn.
we'll be highly upset if they bring all the shit we done polluted the air with and bring it back to us.
Yeah, they're
This
gonna
is all
drop
the
me.
shit you sent up to us.
They're gonna be drowning our ass, man.
So kind of like a little recap here. Okay, so now, are you buying the story that it was a weather balloon?
I'm going thumbs down.
No.
Because I'm on the fence that something I don't. Can I say it was little green men? No, but it was definitely something that was not a weather project. Whether it was some sort of experimental craft, some prototype that they're working on, and they actually, it could have been dummies, but it also could have been dummies in the inside of that craft.